So John chapter 2, verse 1 is where we'll begin to read today. John chapter 2, verse 1. And I'm going to begin a series today called Making Room for a Miracle. Making Room for a Miracle. Here's how it reads. 3 days later, there was a wedding in the village of Cana in Galilee, and Jesus' mother was there. Jesus and his disciples were guests also. When they started running low on wine at the wedding banquet, Jesus' mother told him, they're just about out of wine. Now, let me just pause right there. I don't know about the rest of you men, but I found that most women speak in code. It's called insinuations or suggestions. And then they want us to actually pick up on it and know exactly what they want from us. And the problem is that most men are like me. We don't know that code. So when when Sheila tells me, I say, where do you want to go eat? And she says, I don't care. I take her literally. I go where I want to go. And then she's like, well, how come we didn't go there? And when I say, hey, what's wrong? And she says, nothing, I believe her. Like, yeah, nothing. Then I get in trouble for it later, but I just wanted to point that out, that she doesn't give a directive, she just suggests something by way of words. And that's the first thing I want you to note, is that I feel like Jesus is being set up by his mom a little bit here. But then I also want to suggest to you that behind her words, Jesus had made room, or Jesus' mother, Mary, had made room in her mind for a miracle. We can't make miracles happen, but we can make room in our minds for miracles to happen. And this is what Mary was doing. She's positioning herself as an advocate on behalf of something that she wants to see Jesus do. She's what I'm calling the initiator of possibilities. Just kind of shaking things up, pointing out the possibilities. And by the way, when she says that they're about out of wine, I want to point out, that doesn't qualify as a code blue, life-threatening situation. But it points towards a possibility. And there were lots of people in Cana with greater needs and in more severe circumstances. But miracles don't happen based on how severe the circumstances. If you wait until you're in a really severe crisis to start exercising your faith for God to do something, you've waited way too long. There are people around you, and there always will be, with greater needs, more severe needs than maybe you would say your need is. And also, there are many people, and us included, who have prayers that have not been answered. But what I'm saying to you is, let's not let any of that stop us from being an initiator of possibilities that exist in our life, our family, at our school, on our job, in our church. And just because there are people that have something bigger or more important or vital that is in their life, let's not take a step back whenever we notice an opportunity for something to be different and be better, something that maybe God could do to change the circumstances. You see, there are possibilities that are waiting to be named and circumstances waiting to be changed. There are possibilities that are waiting to be identified, spoken, pointed out. So in the next few weeks, we're going to encourage everyone to ask yourself a question. And that question is, what am I believing God for? What am I believing God for? And the reason that we want to bring this question front and center is that there are possibilities waiting to be named and circumstances waiting to be changed. Someone who you know is messing up their life right now. They're far from God. They're doing their own deal, but they're on your heart for a reason. You're the initiator of possibilities for change in their life. Some of you have been robbed of the life that you were meant to live. There's a scripture where Jesus said this, it's John 10:10. He said, "The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly." Now, a lot of times I think when we just read that, we focus on where he said, steal, kill, destroy. We focus on the kill, the destroy part of it. But I want to just focus a little bit right now on the fact that he said steal. And some of you have had your faith ripped away from you. And you went through something that God allowed you to go through, but in the process, the questions and the negativity and the doubts and the skepticism has replaced the faith and the confidence that once lived inside of you. You've been robbed. It's not God's plan for you to be there, faithless, full of doubt, worry in your mind like you have it right now. But stuff happened, and now the faith you once had is gone because you've been robbed. Some of you have been robbed of your joy. Life hasn't been fun for a long, long time. It's been a burden. And Jesus himself knew that we were going to have these kind of times in our life. He told us that we're going to have trouble. In this world, he said, you'll have trouble. Somebody shout trouble. I just want you to know Jesus knows we're going to have trouble. But then he said, but be of good cheer. like don't let the trouble and the problem that you're going through cause you to abandon your joy or lose your joy. In other words, God never planned for us when we have trouble to come out on the other side joyless. Life is a burden, life is tough, but what I'm pointing out is that the enemy has stolen some people's joy and levity and lightness. Your flexibility is no longer there. There's a rigidity, there's no spiritual life or vitality. Everything has just become rigid and same deal over and over and over again, and you're just stuck right where you are. And I'm telling you that because I'm believing that between now and the upcoming holiday season, end of the year, however you want to say it, Thanksgiving, Christmas, January 1, I'm believing that some of you are going to experience the restorative power of God in your life. And it's going to begin by you identifying what is stolen and what is gone and beginning to make room in your mind for the restoration of joy and levity and lightness and faith and confidence to come back into your heart. Come on, can somebody give me some amen? That's what I want kind of support here today. Remember, possibilities are waiting to be named, and circumstances are waiting to be changed. Just maybe tell somebody around you, I'm making room in my mind. I'm making room. My mind's been crystallized, but I'm making room. Tell the other, I'm making room. Talk about it. Just say it out loud. Just say it straightforward. I'm making room. I'm making room in my mind. Okay, so let's go on with our story. Now that Mary's made room in her mind for a miracle, she's positioned herself, she spoke up about the circumstances. Let's look at how Jesus responds, verse 4. So Jesus said, "Is that any of our business, Mother?" Sheila? Come on, you know I sound like Jesus. Very often. Is that any of our business? Yours or mine? He says, "This isn't my time. Don't push me." And she cowered away. She said, "Oh yeah, you're Jesus." No, look at that, verse 5. She went ahead anyway, as if she didn't hear him. This is a fun part of this whole story. And she just ignores it, tells the servants, whatever he tells you to do, you do it. This is a fun moment. Jesus and his mom exchanging words. See, here's the deal. She knew who he was, but she also knew who she was. She knew that she had been given a say as his mom in what he did and didn't do. It was like, I know who your father is, but your father's going to back me up on this one. And she just went ahead and played the mom card. Now, what she did when she turned to the servants and put them on notice was what I want to just encourage you to realize at the beginning of this series, is that when you make room in your mind for a miracle, there's going to be things that God is going to ask you to do that you haven't done. And there's going to be things that he's going to ask you to do that you've said no to in the past. And so the words of Mary as she sets this whole thing up is letting them know that basically he may tell you to do something, whatever it is, just do what he tells you to do. And I want to say that to our whole church family. Part of making room for a miracle is to do whatever he tells you to do. Like part of making room for a miracle is to break out of habits that are holding you back. The things you have traditionally in your mind, habitually thought about. When we opened up today, I mentioned, I said thank you for staying till the end of service. There are people that just have routines. Like your routine, come late, leave early. That's who we are. You're not making any room when you behave like that. Flex, make room. I'm not bad pastor, I'm good pastor when I talk to you like this. I'm a good pastor when I talk to you like this. Make some room. Look at your neighbor and say, I'm making room. Come on, I'm making room. You know, some have just got your morning routine down, and God may say to you, hey, want a little devotion before you do anything else? I want you to look to me, listen to me, open up your Bible, and talk to me before you begin your day. This is what I'm talking about. I'm saying whatever he says to you, chances are that there is rigidity that has set itself up in your life in one way or another, and you would love to have some things change in your life. You would love to have some breakthroughs in your life, but what you're not ready for is to change your habit and your way of thinking and the approach. And what I'm saying to you is that you can't have one without the other. It begins with a level of flexibility and openness to entertain the possibility. And I don't want to stand up here and say, hey, if you get up earlier every morning and pray, this is going to happen in your life. I want you to consider the possibility and just think, God, what is it that you would have me to do as I point out the possibility for a better marriage, a healthier relationship, a miracle that we're needing to have happen in our lives, in our home, in our family. I want to point that possibility out, God, that we've been stuck where we are way too long, but at the same time, I'm ready. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to make room for that in my life. Okay, so verse 6. 6 stoneware water pots were there, and they were used by the Jews for ritual washings. Each of them held 20 to 30 gallons. So 20 to 30-gallon water pots are sitting right there. And Jesus, it's like, he just like, okay, all right, well, my mom is my mom. And Father in heaven is backing my mom right now. So he ordered the servants fill the pots with water. And they filled them to the brim. And then he said, now fill your pitchers. So they had the big pots, and they would take out of the big pot, and they would pour it into smaller pitchers, and then take them over to the host of the gathering. And so Jesus told them to do that, and they did. And it says in verse 9, when the host tasted the water that had become wine, he tasted the water that had become wine. I'm introducing you for the first time in this message to the miracle, which, by the way, is Jesus' very first miracle that he ever worked. Which is why, if you understand that, he was saying, it's not time yet. It's not time yet. But Mom said, no, Father's backing me. It's time. Let's do this. When the host tasted the water that had become wine, he didn't know what had just happened. The host didn't know. The servants, of course, knew. But the host calls out to the bridegroom, everybody I know begins with their finest wines. And then after the guests have had their fill, brings in the cheap stuff. You, on the other hand, my man, I commend you. You have saved the best till now. In that moment, when all of this is happening, I'm imagining Mary sending out a full-on smile in the direction of her boy, in the direction of Jesus. He's now 30 years old. She raised him. And today is the beginning of his public ministry. This meant a lot to Mary. And Jesus knew it. In some ways, you could say the first miracle was for Mom. This would be a good Mother's Day message, by the way. She and the servants all were included in and got to be a part of the process. So here's my last thought in this message is that miracles start with people who follow the path of possibility. Very few people knew that Jesus turned water into wine that day, including the host. But Mary knew, the servants knew. It all began with Mary. She knew the challenge. She knew that they were running out of wine. She knew somebody's going to be embarrassed. This is going to look bad on the host. And so she starts making room in her mind and naming the possibilities. Now, if nobody speaks up, if nobody puts themselves out there, the wine runs out. It doesn't mean that every time you follow a possibility that it turns into a miracle. What it does mean is that if we don't follow a possibility, it has no chance of becoming a miracle. I want to show you a quote that I've loved for several years. I've read it repeatedly. It's by a famous theologian back in the 1800s, and here's what he said. He said, "It's dangerous business to arrive in eternity with possibilities which one himself has prevented from being actualities." A possibility is a hint from God. A person must follow it. If God does not want it, then let him hinder it. The person must not hinder it himself. Talking about making room. Can you say it out loud? Say, I'm making room. Come on, say, I'm making room. I'm making room in my mind for a miracle. See, God's chosen to include us and to partner with us to bring heaven to earth. That process starts when we make room in our minds for a miracle. You say, well, I thought that was up to God. I thought God does all of that. Well, here's how the supernatural happens, and here's how it's predetermined, is that, and doors open and so forth, is that we cannot without God, and God will not without us. So he's chosen in his sovereignty to partner with humanity, to have his kingdom come and his will be done in the earth. We have a part, and we are privileged to have a part. I said we're privileged to have a part. I said we're privileged. Some friends of ours, Pastor Todd and Julie Mullins, have a son. His name is Jefferson. And Jefferson was diagnosed with autism when he was 2 years old. The diagnosis said that he would not be able to function properly in school and that he would have difficulty his whole life interacting, communicating, and so forth with people. But Pastors Tom and Julie, and I want to make this clear, they didn't ignore the diagnosis or what the doctors said they needed to do, but they did decide that what the doctor said would not describe who their son was. So they didn't let the word of the doctor be the word over their son. And they spoke a different word over Jefferson. They spoke words of healing. They spoke words of life and faith and wholeness. And they told Sheila and I that they worked like it all depended on them, but they prayed like it all depended on God. When he was a teenager, there were serious setbacks in his teen years. He regressed, in other words. And during that time, they just continued to speak. They said it was very hard, but they just continued to speak words of faith and wellness over their son. Today, Jefferson is a senior in university with a 3.9 GPA. And I think we have a picture of him. He plays acoustic, electric, bass guitar. He leads worship. He's engaged to be married. He's living a whole, full, abundant life. That's what I'm talking about. Come on. When we talk about possibilities, and again, here's the deal. What if our friends, Todd and Julie, had accepted the doctor's report as a permanent condition? What if they failed to see, consider, open the door of their mind to the possibilities of something better for their... Would he be on the stage? Would he be leading worship? I don't think so. Would he have a 3.9 GPA? If they just settled in and said, that's what the doctor said. But because they made room in their mind, and they were faithful to that process, day after day after day after day. Come on. We serve a good God. We serve a powerful God. We serve a great God. Come on, we serve a God who can do anything. All things are possible.